Intriguing question. Have you ever heard of a shipwreck so cursed even the bravest sailors refuse to approach it? Dive into the depths of this chilling legend and uncover the terrifying truth behind its paranormal activity. The Pearl of the Deep, the ghost-hunting vessel of the Shadow Hunters team, silently cut through the surging waves of the North Sea. Aboard were Captain Edward, a grizzled veteran whose experiences could fill generations of tailies, Dr. Sarah, a brilliant young parapsychologist whose eyes never flinched in the face of the unexplained, and Sammy, the nervous electronics engineer whose strength lay in his complex devices measuring spiritual activities. Their destination was the Celesta, a luxury liner that sank under mysterious circumstances 50 years ago. Rumors said it didn't sink due to a storm, but because of something on board, something malevolent had dragged it into the depths. No survivors were ever found, but stories of screens and strange lights appearing over the wreck site persisted for generations. The Celesta was now known as the Sunken Twilight Wreck. More importantly, Sarah had found an ancient nautical manuscript. Speaking of an ancient marine entity, the buyer, which not only sank ships, but devoured the souls of their passengers, it could only be summoned through specific rituals involving the drawing of an inverted pentagram. They arrived at the site at dusk as the sun began to fade, leaving the sky a dark violet. Their equipment immediately began to hum faintly. Extremely high activity, higher than anything we've seen before, Sammy muttered, his eyes glued to the screens that glowed red. After preparing their specialized diving gear, which included advanced thermal and electromagnetic sensors, the trio descended into the cold depths. The water was dark and still, like a thick substance swallowing the light. When the Celesta emerged from the gloom, its sight was as majestic as it was terrifying. Its massive hull was twisted and covered in algae, its shattered windows like empty eyes staring into nothingness. As soon as they approached the wreck, their equipment went haywire. Thermal sensor screens showed cold handprints appearing and disappearing on the hull, while electromagnetic readings surged and dipped wildly. "They're here," Sarah whispered through her headset, her voice strangely calm despite the situation. "So many of them." They slipped inside the ship through a large breach in its side. The atmosphere within was even darker and colder. Overturned furniture, broken panels, and scattered passenger belongings created a scene of chaos frozen in time. Sammy began setting up night vision cameras and audio recorders in the main corridors. Suddenly they heard a sound. It was the sound of an old piano playing a mournful tune from the grand ballroom. They cautiously moved towards the sound. When they arrived, the ballroom was plunged in darkness, but their flashlights revealed a grand piano in the center. There was no one there. Its residual energy, or perhaps Lisa? Sarah murmured, recalling the name of the captain's youngest daughter who drowned with the ship. As they explored, the phenomena grew more aggressive. In the passenger cabins, as they entered a luxurious one, they found a large, shattered mirror. As Edward looked into it, faint reflections of dead passengers' faces began to appear, moving independently of the mirror's own movements. Then, these reflections stretched and began to emerge from the mirror's surface as translucent phantoms dancing around them, with increasing whispers. "Join us." "Let's play." Sammy heard overlapping whispers through his headset, like old conversations repeating endlessly, then suddenly transformed into sudden screams of terror. The submersible's clock on Edward and Sammy's wrists began to spin wildly, then suddenly settled on April 14th, 1912. 11:40 p.m. exactly, the time of the Titanic's sinking, not the Celesta. We need to be careful. These aren't just trapped spirits, Sarah said, her eyes scanning the equipment. They're interacting. They're living memories drawn to us or summoning us. When they reached the dining room, they found tables overturned and chairs scattered. Suddenly, all doors leading into the room slammed shut violently. Causing a powerful pressure wave, the flashlight beams turned red and long. Black shadows began to move rapidly between the tables, unlike humans. "They're not spirits," Sammy cried. This is immense negative energy trying to trap us." Sarah's paranormal activity sensor showed a huge concentration of energy in the center of the room. When she directed her light, she saw something that chilled her blood, an old broken wooden doll with one eye sitting on a chair in the center, glowing with a faint blue light. As if it had been watching them the entire time, the doll was the focal point of the energy. Sarah remembered the ancient manuscripts indicating that the buyer could be imprisoned or summoned through a portal, and that this doll was perhaps that very portal now opened. Captain Edward recalled a local legend about the Celestia's original captain, Captain Arthur, known for his obsession with ancient artifacts and cryptic manuscripts. It was said he brought something on board the ship on its last voyage, something he found in ancient excavations, which he kept in his cabin, the captain's cabin. Edward shouted, "Maybe we'll find the answer there." They struggled their way through, avoiding the growing shadows that tried to drag them. When they reached the captain's cabin, they found it in utter chaos. The walls were covered in deep scratches and strange writings in an ancient language, apparently etched by human fingernails amidst the chaos. They found an old audio tape appearing to be a voice recording. Sammy played the tape on a portable device. They heard Captain Arthur's voice. At first, his voice was normal, speaking of the voyage's guests, but it soon turned into maniacal, escalating laughter, accompanied by incomprehensible muttering. Then, amidst the laughter, they heard Arthur's voice clearly say, "They're eating your memories." On the table, they found Captain Arthur's journal. Captain Arthur's journal revealed his discovery of a mysterious companion in his excavations, an ancient entity drawn to despair and fear. He wrote how this entity promised him immortality if he fed it. On the last night, there was no storm. It was the guests Arthur had brought. "I have opened the gate," Arthur wrote, "and now they feed. They sing to me. It's a glorious end." He revealed a drawing of an inverted pentagram on the cabin floor, the ritual he used to summon the entity, and that the wooden doll was the vessel he had imprisoned it in, now unleashed. As they read, Sarah felt an intense cold and heard her great-grandfather's voice whisper next to her ear, "Run. It's a trap. They're not spirits, they're bait." Immediately, strange wounds began to appear on her arms, in the form of dark, calcified circles, resembling the marks in Captain Arthur's journal. Her watch stopped at 11:40 p.m., April 14th, 1912. The whispers, screams, and eerie laughter now rose to become a single, terrifying chorus, reverberating throughout the wreck. The black shadows became denser, solidifying into massive, non-human forms with long, slender limbs. "They're not ghosts," Sarah screamed, her eyes widening in horror. "They're fragments of the entity itself. It feeds on memories and fear. And now it's trying to devour us." Suddenly, Sammy's equipment began to glow red, and a distorted voice emerged from it. Sammy's own voice, but faint and desperate. "Don't look at the window. Don't look." They're coming. Then a sudden silence. Edward turned to see Sammy had vanished, leaving behind air bubbles and his equipment bag floating lifelessly. The wreck itself began to shake violently, as if something enormous was moving it from outside. The flashlight beams began to dim, and everything turned into a dark, ominous blue. The last thing Captain Edward saw before darkness consumed him was Sarah's silhouette as she turned towards him, her eyes suddenly glowing with that terrifying blue light, exactly like the entity's eyes in Arthur's drawing. He heard her voice whisper softly, "Now you're part of the twilight. Come to the eternal depths." Then everything went black. Weeks later, rescue teams launched a desperate search to find the Pearl of the Deep. They found no trace of the ship or its crew. The Celesta, or the sunken twilight wreck, held on to its dark secret. But months later, a local fisherman found Sarah's diving camera on a remote beach, washed ashore by the waves. Miraculously, the camera was still working. When the investigation team examined its footage, there were dark, disturbing clips from inside the wreck. But the final frames were the most chilling. They showed a colossal shadow following the rescue team as they returned to shore, as if watching them from underwater. And in one of the concluding shots, the same strange, calcified circular marks that appeared on Sarah's body slowly formed on the arm of one of the rescue divers pulling the camera from the water. When they played the last audio recording from the camera, they heard a distorted voice, Sarah's voice, but intertwined with deep whispers. 48, 52, 6 and 8, 19. Point Ada, the buyer has awakened. And now it will feed in your world. Come to us. In his bathroom, Jake, one of the rescue team members who found the camera, stands under the hot shower. He looks exhausted. Suddenly, the water stops flowing, and he hears faint whispers coming from behind the shower curtain, like children laughing. He freezes in place. Jake looks into the steamy mirror in front of him and wipes it with his hand. His tired face reflects in the mirror, but something isn't right. His reflection in the mirror smiles at him with a wide, grotesque grin, its eyes glowing with a cold, terrifying blue light. While Jake's real face remains grim and shocked, dark, calcified circles slowly form on his neck in the reflection. Jake quickly closes and opens his eyes, finding his reflection back to normal, but the blue glow slowly fades from his real eyes. In the ocean's depths, where sunlight ends and eternal darkness begins, the dead do not always rest, they wait. For some secrets should never be discovered, because if you gaze long enough into the abyss will gaze back into you.